Okay, so thank you so much everyone for joining us on this webinar about summer meal sites at farmers markets. Just as a brief background on the program for folks who might be new to the summer meal program, it is a USDA funded child nutrition program for children 18 and under. In Massachusetts, it's administered by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And then through a state funded grant, the Child Nutrition Outreach Program at Project Bread supports that program. So we help our sites and sponsors be able to find one another and to be as successful as possible during the summer. So a brief agenda. We'll talk a little bit about meal sites at farmers markets, then some general best practices we found from farmers markets last summer. A few case studies, including we have Simca Horwitz from the Mass Farm to School here to share some of the resources they provide for this program. And then Andrea, and I apologize, Andrea, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but Andrea Janota from the Revere Farmers Market.
Yeah, Janota, you were close.
I definitely understand difficult names, so I apologize for that. And then we'll go through a couple of next steps of if you're interested in being a site, what you might need to do, and then we'll open up for questions, which I'm hoping we'll have a lot of time for. Everyone, we have a second laptop sitting next to mine. That's what happened. So I wanted to show this slide just to show the potential of farmers market sites in Massachusetts. The dark green color is the 5 farmers markets we had this previous summer in 2016. And all those kind of like more lime green, lighter green color are sites that are eligible for the summer meals program, but not currently doing it. So as you can see, if even half of farmers markets in Massachusetts considered doing this program, we'd have a substantial growth. So as I said, in my position, I was tasked to look at best practices at our meal sites last summer. And so we found a couple things that apply to quite a few different sites. I'll try to mention specifically how they apply to farmers markets. The first thing is just to acknowledge that staffing really matters. In some cases, the sponsor, which will be the partner that you most closely work with as a site, in some cases, they will provide the staffing. But as kind of an early assumption, it's probably best to think about ways that volunteers or market staff may be able to help in terms of staffing. And the staffing requirements is something we can get into more detail with each individual farmers market. But the basic requirement is that you have a site supervisor who is checking off those meals and enforcing some of the rules. And then kind of as a support to that, we also encourage considering team staffing. So several of our farmers markets, Revere and Common Square come to mind first, had team staff who were involved with the summer meal program in some way. And the benefit there was that there's a lot of stigma around the program, unfortunately. And so with having team staff, you make it a little easier for other teams to access the program. And you also, at the very minimum, have those team staff eating those meals. Because even though there's a high need amongst teams, we found that only a small percentage actually utilize these programs. Additionally, signage is really key. That's one of those things that might seem obvious, but I can't emphasize enough that if you have adequate signage, it's going to be a lot easier to get people to the right table or tent or spot where the meals are. And it's going to decrease a lot of confusion, which again could feed back into that stigma. So whatever your resources are, I encourage to have signage as many places as possible. At Greenfield, they had a couple of yard signs, so they were able to stick that around the market and show in various places that there was a meal site nearby. And then they had a banner at the table, so then people, once they made it to the table, didn't have to question like, oh, is this some other vendors here at the farmers market, they knew that it was in fact the meal site. And some of those things we can help you with. We have a lot of outreach materials you could use for that purpose. So definitely get in touch if that might be a challenge. And then programming is also something we encourage for all of our meal sites. And for farmers markets, that could look a lot of different ways. When we say programming, we want some sort of activity that gets kids, teens, and families to your site. Because unfortunately, even if they need the meal, a meal might not be enough to get somebody at a summer meal food program site. So by having programming, you give them an extra benefit and an extra incentive for coming. So at a farmer's market, that could be taste tests, that could be cooking demonstrations, that could be like a scavenger hunt around the farmer's market. A lot of these things I know farmers markets are already doing, so you can just make sure that you have extra sheets or recipes or whatever associated with that program at that table with the summer meal site. And so that way you don't have to necessarily have additional programming, but you can utilize what you already are doing. And then choosing the right location, again, is kind of like signage where sometimes it seems obvious at first, but it can really make or break a program in terms of how much participation and how easy it is to enforce the rules that are part of a program. So we encourage kind of the gold standard at a farmer's market is to have a tent with tables and chairs. If you have extra tents as part of your market or can partner with another organization that could do that, that is great, because not only will you be able to enforce the congregate feeding rules, which is the USDA rule that meals must be consumed on site, but also it creates kind of a lively atmosphere where, again, people know exactly what's going on. They can see kids and teens sitting with their family and eating a meal and enjoying that. So it helps reinforce the whole program. But I said old style because there's definitely a lot of other ways to do it. If you have some benches, if you have like a shady area, or even if you just had like picnic blankets, something that encourages people to sit in a place, so then it's also easier to enforce that rule of making sure everyone eats at the location. And then one last thing about choosing the right location is that you want to make sure that it is visible and clear that it's a meal site, but also it's really wonderful if you can still make that delicate balance of also incorporating it into the market. So Revere, which we'll hear about a little bit more, the tent for both eating and for vending the meals were right at the end of the market. So it still felt like one activity as opposed to kind of a disjointed thing going on at the same site. Meal times. So the USDA program is very flexible. You obviously have to have breakfast before you have lunch and things like that, but you could have a pretty large meal window. So for farmers markets, we encourage you to have that big window because, as you know, it's a place that people are coming and going. So if you have lunch over 3 hours as opposed to half an hour, you're going to serve a lot more kids. And on that note, you can serve up to 2 meals, and it can be any combination of meals except for lunch and dinner. So you can offer a snack, you can offer breakfast, you can have lunch, and you can have supper, just not lunch and supper together. And so if you have an evening farmers market, you can still do dinner. If you have a long market, you can do a meal and a snack to really maximize the benefit to the market, to your sponsor, and of course to the kids and families who need the meals. Communication and outreach, again, is so critical. When you connect with a sponsor, the sponsor is really going to be able to tell you what they already do in the community. A lot of times flyers and other messaging goes home to the schools, so people can already know about the sites. But especially if this is going to be your first summer, we really encourage you to connect with people in the neighborhood, do canvassing. We do something called a Blitz Day, which we can help you do in your community, where you go knock on doors or businesses nearby and maybe hang posters or other signage to let people know about the meal site nearby. And on this note, I included the Summer Eats app, which is our new app that we launched last summer, which you can download from any app store. And that will let you find a meal site near you. This is something that is particularly beneficial at a farmer's market setting because you're likely doing your market once a week. So your meal site will only be that one day a week, but you can be kind of the outreach for other sites in your community. You can definitely get that benefit of a meal that one day to say, hey, check out this app or check out, if you have a flyer from your sponsor and go to these meal sites Monday through Friday and then come back here next Saturday for your Saturday farmer's market visit and a meal. So that one I also want to emphasize if you're on this call and you're starting to think that your farmer's market might not be an ideal fit, or if you are outside the eligibility area, you can still be a place to promote this program and people can find other places to get meal sites other than your farmer's markets. And then finally, cross-promoting programs is great for all types of sites, but really fantastic for farmers markets. We are working with some WIC sites, health centers, and libraries, and I know that at several markets, you have overlap with those programs. You have people using their WIC vouchers or they're using their double up SNAP benefits. So really trying to tie together that communication where the eligibility for these programs are very similar, so making it really worth people's while to get all the great benefits of a farmer's market, but also benefit with a direct meal for their children or teenagers. So that was a lot to share. Now for the more fun part, to hear about the actual stories of markets this last summer, I'm going to hand it over to Andrea, who can share about the Revere Farmers Market.
Great, thank you, Leran. So I think that you've provided a ton of incredibly helpful information, and I definitely resonate with all of that as running the market in Revere. The team that we had, they made this so easy. So if you are thinking about having your market be a summer meal site, I absolutely encourage it. So some of the things that we really found that were beneficial is this is such a natural partnership between what we're trying to accomplish at our market. It's a market that's definitely for the whole community, but we do have a matching program, so we are specifically looking to really provide some extra assistance to families with WIC or SNAP or seniors. We also provide the matching for veterans, and these are a lot of people who are either have kids themselves, their families, or are grandparents of younger kids. So it's a great way to promote the project throughout the entire community and just be able to reach a lot of kids. So what we saw that was really exciting was that our market became very much a social space. So we had a lot of cute kids who were there, and their moms would hang out and get to chat, or we saw grandparents who would sit together. We did, as Leran said, we had a tent that's in this picture here. We have with our Zumba sign. So we had a tent and we would put out tables, and I would tape butcher paper to them and draw little farm scenes and put out crayons. People could color when they were done eating. If we had a musician that week, we would have the chair set up in a way that people could sit and enjoy their food and listen to the music, or get in and dance some Zumba before you had your healthy lunch. So it really just brought a lot of livelihood with young kids and teenagers. As you can see in the picture, there are a bunch of teens jumping into the Zumba class. At our market, we had youth workers at the Summer Meals program tent, but we also have youth who staff the market itself. So they were able to use this as a benefit to get a really good lunch and to bring a lot of their friends. So we saw a lot more young people who were probably high school age students who were using the program as a result of having our youth workers. So yeah, I think that it's a wonderful program. It's really exciting and really fun, and happy to answer any questions. This was our first year doing it, and like I said, it went really well, and we're excited to continue.
And just so everyone knows, at that site, it was run by the Revere Public Schools, and they had, I think, about at least 100 every Friday. So that's quite a big impact for the community. But on the other side of the spectrum, we had some sites at farmers markets that had 15 or 20, and that's still such a great impact. So you're bringing in more customers, and you're also serving a population that needs these meals. I just also wanted to include one of our other great sites from this last summer, Greenfield. Unfortunately, they were not able to make it to the webinar, but you can see on the right side of this slide, Greenfield, as part of kind of programming, did a tasting of like watermelon, and sometimes they would use other fruits and vegetables. When able, they were using fruits and vegetables from a market. So that was both a way for kids to try new things, but also a great way to get them excited about the meal site. And also a lot of families walked around and ate that fruit while they were shopping and then came back for a meal. So again, it's a great way to benefit the farmers market itself as well as the meal site. They had some kids activities. They had this puppeteer who came one day. So that was fun and sounds like something that they've done before at the market. So again, it doesn't mean that you have to create all brand new programming, but you can incorporate programming you've already used before. And then some vendors and schools that have been sponsors have been able to form relationships and then continue using that relationship during the school year. So Greenfield, the school nutrition director, who was one of staffing the site, often made better connections with some of the farmers market. So that was just a great. And now I'll turn it over to Simca from Mass Farm to School.
Great. Thanks, Leran. And yeah, so I think for a lot of folks, you really probably already know why incorporating locally grown food into the meals could be an added benefit. It really just makes sense if you're serving the food at a farmer's market and people are seeing that sort of great quality and bounty, to have that reflected in the meals that are being served as well, and really create those connections so that it feels like it's of the same quality. And I think it's also a really great strategy for convincing families who maybe don't necessarily already have good attitudes towards the types of foods that are served in school or summer meals, that the understanding that the meal that's being served has some of the same foods that they may be shopping for can really help boost participation. And as Leran talked about, it's also, you know, a great opportunity to develop connections with the farmer vendors at the market through things like testing or connecting to other educational activities that are happening at the market, like cooking demonstrations or nutrition education. And so there's different opportunities to either source directly from farms that are selling at the market, or to find some other methods for sourcing local foods for the meals. And so one thing I just wanted to mention was related to sort of promotional activities and opportunities to cross-promote what's being served in the meals with the things that farmers are actually selling. Mass Farm to School runs a campaign called Harvest of the Month that highlights a different locally grown crop each month. And participating, be it schools or sponsors, are able to access free promotional materials, so posters, these little trading cards are kind of like baseball cards, but for fruits and vegetables, stickers that say I tried it, and these can be really handy kind of giveaways at the farmers market, or things to encourage people to try new foods if you're doing any sort of taste testing. And again, they can be sort of used both by the meal site and by the market more generally. So if there's, for example, cucumbers featured in the meal, if there's farmers that are selling cucumbers, maybe they'd want to have this same sort of point of sale promotional material at their stand. And we also provide resources for folks participating in the program, ideas for activities that relate to the crops, or if you're doing, for example, cooking demonstrations, recipes that might work well on that are also the kinds of recipes that fit into a summer meal. And we do a family newsletter. So that's something that also a market might want to give out. That's just about family scaled recipes or serving ideas literacy connections related to the crops. So those are all resources that are available free to markets and sponsors.
Well, if you still have those
in terms of accessing the local foods, there's a couple different ways that you might do this. So purchasing directly from a farm, possibly through a food distributor that the vendor already has a relationship with, getting product at a farmer's market, or potentially through what's known as community-supported agriculture, where people are really, essentially buying a share of what a farm has to harvest and get a different box of veggies, whatever is fresh that week. And so I won't get into a whole lot of specifics because I imagine we don't have a ton of folks on the webinar who are actually preparing meals themselves. But if you will be talking to the sponsor, whoever is actually making the meals, just want to reiterate that Mass Farm to School is a resource for helping them figure out what the local food sourcing mechanism that would best work for them, and working to connect them directly to the foods that they're actually looking for. So that's the contact info. I work more in the eastern part of the state. My colleague Lisa's in Western Mass, and we are happy to help out. And the website is massfarmtoschool.org.
Thank you, Simca. And Mass Farm to School have been great partners in getting this launched. So again, if you're looking for programming ideas or wanting to figure out how to strengthen that local connection at the meal site, definitely reach out to them. They're a great resource. So I wanted to share a few next steps for folks who are at least considering being a meal site at their farmers market. So the first thing is to contact me, and I don't necessarily say that out of desperation. I say that just as I'm here as a resource, and we can talk about confirming that your farmers market is actually in an open area, eligible area. The program functions in two ways. It could be a closed site, or typically that's for like a summer camp where they collect applications, and at least 50% of those applications are kids who receive free and reduced meals during the school year. So not a great fit for a farmer's market, but if you're in an open area where we've already found that there's a high percentage of those children living in that area, then your census block can be eligible. So most of the people we reached out to for this webinar, you do fall under that category, but it's still good to confirm that before moving too far ahead. And then some things to consider as you're starting off deciding how you're going to be a meal site. As I said earlier, staffing. I covered that in quite a bit earlier, so get in touch if you have questions about staffing. Meal times, just think about when that meal time will be. Again, the program is pretty flexible, so we encourage a longer window so that you connect to as many families as possible. However, if you do have limited staff capacity, having a shorter meal time and really advertising that meal time is also a possibility for like a where you're not sure, but you could spend 2 or 3 hours having a meal. Meal storage, again, this is something that's going to be really dependent on your sponsor, but you will have to make sure that the meals are stored in a way that they are at a safe temperature. And so at a farmer's market, if you have a sponsor that will deliver it directly and you're only serving for a few hours, typically that cooler is enough if it's packed properly. But that's a nitty-gritty detail, but something that if you're on a weekend, you might want to think, is there any place that we could store a meal overnight in case my sponsor needs to deliver the day before? So that's where there might be a few logistical challenges, but nothing that we haven't encountered before and can't overcome. So just something to start brainstorming about. Meal location, again, we covered that quite a bit, but just where at your farmer's market would be the best spot for a meal, both for that congregate feeding rule, but also to attract as many people as possible. Again, programming, if you're doing programming, just how to connect the two. And if you're not, what easy programming can you start with this first year? And then allies and partners, that kind of goes across the board here. You know, who in your community or who nearby where your farmers market is can store meals. What volunteer groups can provide programming? You know, do you have any musicians or performers who can come to the farmers market? Do you have like a local teacher who's not busy during the summer who can help volunteer and staff the site? Just any number of partners who can make it stronger. And then if you happen to need staff, then those are the folks you can tap in case you don't have the capacity yourself. Outreach, you know, this is important every single year and throughout the summer, but especially in your first year, we want to make sure that you and the sponsor have a great first experience. So doing everything you can to promote the program. Again, CNOP has a lot of materials. So if you are interested in at least promoting the program, and especially if you're going to a site, get in touch and we can send you all those materials free of charge and promote your program. And then finally, getting in contact with your sponsor. That's the entity that's going to manage the whole program. We're going to either make the meals and deliver them to you, or we're going to work with a vendor who's making the meals, and we're going to work with sites. So, you know, there's a lot of details we didn't quite go over in this webinar, but a lot of that stuff your sponsor will train you on. So like the proper meal storage and temperatures. I know that sometimes provokes a little bit of anxiety. We've never had a problem to my knowledge, and the sponsor is going to make sure that you have all the knowledge you need to continue with that winning streak of having safe and healthy meals served at sites throughout the state. And then just like number one, stay in touch with us. If you have any challenges, any problems, any questions, you want to brainstorm new programming, new outreach methods, just keep in touch with us. We're here. That's a significant portion of our jobs is to support you in a great summer program. So here's my contact information. I'll email it out again after the webinar, so don't feel the need to scribble it down right now. And now I wanted to open up to any questions. We have just over 20 minutes, so if anybody has questions, I believe everyone is unmuted because of the technical difficulties. And thank you for being attentive while we went through all these details. And feel free to use your phone or your computer microphone or use the chat box. Any questions out there? I'm hoping that's because everyone's excited to have a meal site.
Well, as you guys are thinking, I'm going to just add one other clarifying thing that when Leran was talking about training from sponsors, that we've sort of seen a couple different ways that meals have actually been distributed at farmers markets. So in some places, the market staff or volunteers are actually doing that distribution. In some places, like this was the case in Greenfield, where the sponsor, which was the Greenfield Public Schools, they made the food, they delivered it, and they also manned the entire distribution. So really their own staff were the ones who were trained on proper storage. And so that would be part of the process of figuring out in your community, in your market, who the sponsor is and kind of what the situation would be in terms of their capacity to manage meal distribution versus needing the market to take on some of those responsibilities.
And also, while people are thinking, I believe we have at least one person from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed on the call. I don't know if you have anything you want to add as our state agency that administers the program. You can jump in a moment, but just wanted to give you that opportunity. I'll give it a few more seconds. Does anybody have a question? Of course, you're welcome to email us with I'll go back to that slide. So if people prefer to ask questions that way, then you certainly can follow up at any time. Okay, I'm going to assume that's just overwhelming excitement and everyone's brainstorming ways to make their meal site at their farmers market work well this summer. And I'll look forward to hearing from all of you as that first step towards being a meal site.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.